railroad companies reject paid sick leave for their employees. On Unbossed, we are pro-union, and that's why we are going to put a spotlight on railroad workers fighting for benefits, better wages, and better work conditions. So paid sick leave has been at the forefront of this fight for our family and friends at the railroads, with the union highlighting horrendous workplace conditions and policies of rail carriers. So unions complain that to manage a shortfall of employees, the carriers effectively force their members to remain on call for days and sometimes weeks at a time, partly through the use of strict attendance policies that could lead to disciplinary action or even firing. Now, there was a tentative agreement, we may all remember, there was a tentative agreement reached in September. It was celebrated by rail carriers and the Biden administration. But workers were left scratching their heads when key details were missing. Yeah, the proof is always in the pudding, as they say. So union leaders had pushed for 15 days of paid leave, but the proposal deal landed on just 1 day. What in the unholy hell? Just 1 day? Just 1 day. Yeah, just 1 day. I got to say that just because I can't believe it. It's impossible right now to make heads or tails of what this agreement means, and it's disgraceful how opaque it is, said Ron, a locomotive engineer and member of the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen. About half of the 115,000 freight rail workers involved in this dispute held out for a concession on scheduling, like the ability to see a doctor or attend to a personal matter without risking disciplinary action. Now, the union would eventually reject this deal and come to the table with a new proposal, but now they have been shunned. The National Carriers Conference Committee rejected a proposal from the third largest rail workers union, which called for just 7 days of paid sick leave per year. Jessica, they're not asking for a whole lot.
They're really not at all. And I mean, the rail industry made 20 billion in profits last year. It's not like they can't afford to give these workers sick leave. Imagine driving a freight train for 10 to 12 hours a day, getting called in at 3 in the morning. And now they're trying to have one-man crews. So you're doing that alone as well. That will exhaust you, and you can't even take 1 day off. They currently have 0 sick days. If your child's being born, if you happen to get so sick that you're in the hospital, you could risk being fired. This is not sustainable for the workers. They are really treating them like they are less than human. And what are they doing with all of their profits that they could be using to give workers very reasonable benefits for the work they're doing? They're buying back their stocks to increase their earnings per share threshold, which will then increase returns to the shareholders of that company while their workers are struggling to get by.
And that's what it's all about. Just follow the money. This excessive corporate greed is literally killing people mentally and sometimes physically. And the rail workers are not asking for a whole lot. The Biden administration needs to come back and put the hammer on these rail companies. This is totally unacceptable. So workers and industry observers emphasize that the railroad companies, including Union Pacific, CSX, and Norfolk Southern are seeing record profit margins of around 40%, mostly due to large cuts to headcounts over the past several years. But workers say they haven't benefited. So we got Clark Bayou, a spokesman for the rail union Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division, and he spoke out. He said they'd still be making record profits if they agreed to provide railroad workers paid sick leave. Bayou told the Associated Press, adding that paid sick leave for employees has become a norm in this society. You better believe it. And Clark, he is absolutely right. Check out this data from the US Bureau of Statistics, which documents who has access to paid sick leave benefits. And we see private industry workers compared to civilian workers, compared to state and local government workers. In 2010, 63%, of private industry workers, civilian workers, 67%, and state and local government workers, 89%. If we come on and fast forward all the way to 2020, 75%, we see the trend going in the right direction. Civilian workers, 78%, and for state and local government workers, 91%. That's right. This is the right thing to do, because the very people that are helping this railroad industry make all of those enormous profits deserve the opportunity to take sick leaves. It makes for better production, better output by the employees themselves. Jessica, these folks are not robots, but I get the sneaking suspicion that they are being treated as if they are damn robots.
Absolutely. And I've heard people say, well, it would be catastrophic if these workers end up going on strike. They're not getting a contract that is fair. That's very clear. And this rail industry controls a third of supply. If they go on strike, it will absolutely disturb supply, and people will not have supplies in grocery stores like we saw at the beginning of the pandemic. So people are saying, well, the workers shouldn't strike. It is totally blood on the hands of corporations if we get in that scenario and foods are not on the shelves. I mean, seriously, we cannot let them divide and conquer us. We've talked a lot about solidarity and collective liberation today, and that's super important because exactly what they want us to do is to be fighting each other. And if we're quiet or if we're complicit with their narratives, we're only pawns in their game. So fighting for collective liberation means deciding to not stay quiet and not be a pawn in their game and come together and flip the table instead, which is what really needs to happen, because they're only going to get more aggressive with this and try and get Congress to have the bosses sign a deal that forces them to work with an unfair contract, which could happen.
It could happen, Jessica. This is disgusting. And what is happening with the railroad workers could happen to anybody across this country. And we do need, as Jessica laid out, that kind of collective workers' rights solidarity. The federal government can do something about this, Jessica. We cannot accept this as it is. They need to rail in, excuse the pun, these railroad bosses and let them know under no uncertain terms, is this acceptable? People deserve, and I am using that word very advisedly, these workers deserve to have paid sick leave. That is not asking for too much. It is a part of what should be happening in the 21st century. This stuff cannot stand. Come on, feds, do your job and stop allowing the rail bosses to take advantage of the workers who actually make this nation run. Like literally make this nation run. We need to do better. We know better and we need to do better. And shame on those rail bosses for putting their workers through this. And shame on all of us for accepting it. We got to fight, baby.